middle when Ahab's family, and they kind of start, Israel and Judah, we'll talk about it starting this morning, start kind of mixing because of the family of Ahab and the marriage alliance. So we'll talk about those, but there's just two. One is kind of a chart of both, and then the other is kind of zoomed into the central part of the picture there. So if you didn't get those, we'll have extra copies. You can get those. All right. We're going to be, where are we? We're going to be in 2 Kings chapter 8 this morning. So let's start with a word of prayer. Our Almighty Father, you are great and glorious. You are the all-powerful, the all-knowing, the all-seeing. And we thank you for looking down and seeing us this morning, for giving us the opportunity to be here, for giving us the opportunity to worship you today. We pray that our worship will glorify you in a way that is fitting of your great and surpassing glory. And we pray that you'll be with us now in our class, that we will, as we study your word, that we will understand the things that you want us to understand and help us to grow in greater love for you, in greater service, and the ability to do what is right. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. All right, so your assignment while I was gone the last couple of weeks was to learn all the kings. So how'd you guys do with that? No? All right. We'll keep singing the songs then. Some people have told me you've learned them without the songs, which is great. But we'll keep singing. So we'll start with the kings of Israel. Who was the first king of Israel? Jeroboam. All right. Jeroboam, Nadab, Baasha, Elah, Zimri, Omri, Ahab, Ahaziah, Joram, Jehu, Jehoahaz, Joash, Jeroboam, to Zechariah, Shalom, Menahem, Pekahiah, Pekah, Hoshea. All right, good. And then kings of Judah. Who was the first king of Judah? Rehoboam. All right. Rehoboam, Abijah, Asa, and Jehoshaphat, Joram, Ahaziah, Athaliah, Joash, Amaziah, and Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, Hezekiah, Manasseh, Amon, and Josiah, Jehoahaz, Jehoiakim, Jehoiachin, Zedekiah. All right, good. All right, so what kings of Israel have we talked about so far? That's Judah. Yes. We'll do that in a second. Hold that. I'll come to you. We'll get to you in a second. Israel. Starting with Jeroboam. Obviously, we covered Jeroboam. Who else? Nadab, Baasha, Elah, Zimri, Omri. Yep. Ahab, Ahaziah, and Joram. Okay, so we've been talking about all those specifically lately. We've been talking about Joram, but most of the focus has been on who during Joram's reign? Well, okay. Who else? Not the king. Elisha, right? The prophet. Okay, so Elisha has been specifically kind of dealing with Joram the way Elijah specifically dealt with who? Ahab, his father. Okay. All right. So so we've been talking there about the family of Ahab with his sons Ahaziah and then Joram, and then in Judah, what kings have we covered in Judah? Rehoboam. Yep. Asa, and Jehoshaphat. Okay, and that's really it. All right, just those four kings. So as we've talked about, more stability in Judah, that's about to change. All right, and then, so we'll talk about this morning, then we'll start talking about Jehoshaphat's son, Joram. All right? Okay, so we're going to pick up then in 2 Kings chapter 8, still talking really about Elisha here. So a couple more stories related to Elisha. And so, again, that I don't know why that happens. The Elisha and dealing particularly with Joram of Israel. All right. So, in the first part of the story, then, as we come in chapter 8 and verse 1, Talks about Elisha had said to the woman whose son he had restored to life. All right, so who is he talking about there? What woman is he talking about there? The Shunammite. Okay, and where have we seen her before? No, not exactly. Similar, but a really similar story, yes? Elisha brought her back to life. That's right. Okay, so this is the story with Elisha. Elisha has dealt with the Shunammite woman before. Again, very similar story. Elijah had a similar story, right? But this one's a little bit different. All right, back in chapter 4 here of 2 Kings, she built a room, as mentioned, for Elisha to stay. And then so Elisha was like, well, what can we do for her? And ultimately, she was childless, so he gave her a son. Okay? And then as mentioned, the son became sick and actually died, and Elisha resurrected her son from the grave. Okay? So all of that happened back in chapter 4. The next thing that happens, if you go back to chapter 4 and verse 38, the next thing that happens is it tells us there's a famine in the land. All right? And that's when Elisha has the story where he's dealing with the sons of the prophets, and he purifies the stew and so on. Okay? So we're told there was a famine. Now when we come to chapter 8, we're told that Elisha had told her about the famine to come and told her to go elsewhere so that she could survive the famine. Okay, so he basically saves her in that way as well. So where does she go at Elisha's warning? Where does she go? Yeah, okay, so she goes to Philistia. She spends 7 years to avoid the famine. Okay, and now, so it says she did according to the word of Elisha. So the 7 years are over, and she returns now, but what's the problem? Yeah, she wants her land back. Now, it's interesting. We were told about her husband back in chapter 4. He doesn't appear in the story here. And back in chapter 4, it mentioned that he was old. All right, so we could surmise, it doesn't say, but we could surmise that possibly her husband has died during those 7 years. Okay, so now she comes back, and she's the land that she had before is not hers. And again, we're not told exactly what happened there. Could be the king took it, or someone else is living there, or whatever. But she is going to ask for her land to be returned to her. All right. Now, so when she comes back, what is going on? When she's going to approach the king, Jesse. Okay, so Gehazi is talking to the king. When did we last see Gehazi? Okay, with Naaman? Yeah, all right, so who was Gehazi? Yeah, he was Elisha's servant, kind of his right-hand man, it seems like. But then after the story of Naaman, what happened to him? He got leprosy. Why? He got greedy. All right, so he went after. Naaman had offered money to Elisha. Elisha turned him down. But then Gehazi was like, hey, why are we not getting any benefit of that? And he goes and asks for something. Elisha knew it all along, and he's struck with leprosy. Okay? So then we might think, well, what is he doing now talking to the king? And again, the text doesn't really tell us. It just says, we could surmise potentially, we know he has a problem with greed, so potentially maybe he's trying to somehow get in good with the king, but it doesn't say. All right? Whatever reason, we know Gehazi was there for all of those events, and so he's here. And what does the king ask Gehazi to do?
He wants to know about all the things that Elisha has done.
Yeah, tell me all the great things that Elisha has done. All right? Which is sort of an interesting question. Now remember, what king are we talking about here? Doesn't say, but we know who it is. Yeah, this is Joram of Israel, okay? And he's asking Gehazi to tell him about all the great things that Elisha has done. So that's kind of interesting, right? Now remember, Jehoram, what kind of king was Jehoram of Israel? He was an evil king, all right? But his relationship with Elisha is interesting, right? So it said he was an evil king, but it also said he was not like his father, all right? He didn't worship the Baals, okay? Now, he still stuck to the sins of Jeroboam, so the calf worship. But he's not as evil, and he actually, at times, we've seen Elisha helping him out, right? Right? Remember back in chapter 6, where there's the great story there where Elisha can see what's going on with the king of Syria and he's telling the king of Israel all his moves, right? Everything that's going to happen, and then you have the great story there where he can see the army of God and the chariots of fire and all those things, and then he shows them to his servant. One of the absolute great stories of the Bible that we should be telling over and over. But anyway, point is, at times, Jehoram and Elisha kind of work together, and it's interesting to see here that he really wants to know all the great stories of Elisha. Yeah.
Even to the point of when those men are all defeated, and Elisha brings them to the king asks Elisha, do you want us to kill them, or what shall we do?
Yeah.
You know?
And he listens to the answer, which is really interesting. Okay, so bad king, not a good king, but not as bad as we might expect, okay, being the son of Ahab, all right, in some ways. All right, so he's there recounting all the stories of Elisha, and right as he gets to the point where he tells the story about the Shunammite woman and resurrecting her son and all that, what happens? She walks in to ask for her land back, all right? So it just so happens that she walks in right as Gehazi is getting to this point of the story, okay? And so Gehazi says, oh, here's the woman right here. Here she is. And so the king asks, like, hey, is everything he's telling true? And she says, yeah, that's exactly how it happened. And so what happens? He gives her her land back, all right? So King Jehoram restores her land. So again, interesting that he would do that. Again, this does basically follow the law, all right? So the law talks about people should retain their land. Okay, go back to Deuteronomy 15 and the restoration of property and all those things. So again, those aren't necessarily exactly this fact pattern, but based on the way the law of Moses worked, you would expect that's what should have happened, right? It's the right thing to do, and he does it. All right? So again, we see, well, go ahead.
I think it's interesting that he says that the instruction is to give her all the produce of her land from the time that she left to go to the land of Philistia to now. Mm-hmm. Which reminds us that God doesn't deal in minimums.
Yeah.
He is very abundant.
Yeah, he actually does more maybe than what she asked for, right? Restoring like the amount of the crops that would have been hers the whole time she was gone, okay? So, again, we see God, through Elisha, providing for this woman, right? And why does he do that? I mean, the text doesn't say, but if we go back to the previous story, yeah. Yeah, she was a woman of faith, right? She was helpful to Elisha. She had faith. Remember, when her son dies, she goes and finds Elisha. She is laser focused on finding Elisha so that he can resurrect her son, right? Yeah.
I think in addition to that, in this account in chapter 8, Elisha is referred to 5 times as the man of God. Mm-hmm. So I think that any time that we see a repeated phrase or word, we need to pay attention to that.
Yep.
And the Apostle Paul referred to Timothy in 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 11 as man of God. So yeah, it's important for us to recognize that God recognizes us as someone who is trying at least to be like him as much as he can.
Yeah, and particularly in these cases, this man of God designation at this time is generally focused on the prophets, right? So if you have faith in the man of God, it's faith in what he can do through the power of God, right? Somebody have a hand? No? Okay. All right. Anything else on that part of the story? All right. So the next section then, kind of the scene changes a little bit, and we see that Elisha, it says in verse 7, goes to Damascus. Okay. Is there anything interesting about that? Where is Damascus? Syria, all right? It's the capital of Syria, all right? So this is outside of Israelite territory, and in fact, it's the capital of the nation that has been the primary enemy of Israel for the last several chapters, right? Okay. What else? Anything else interesting about that? Yeah.
You want to go New Testament, Paul
on Jesus on the road to Damascus.
Okay, yeah, so Damascus is going to stick around for a while. Yeah, good point. Okay. Again, if you go back to chapter 6, the story we were just talking about, Ben-Hadad tried to kill him, tried to kill Elisha. Right? So again, that story where Elisha could see what was going on with the king of Syria, that was Ben-Hadad. And Ben-Hadad's response was to try to kill him, right? To come down and surround the city and try to kill him. And that's when, Elisha could say, well, who's with us is more than with them, and just show his servant the chariots of fire and all that. Okay? So Ben-Hadad has wanted to kill him, and now here's Elisha just waltzing up to Damascus, okay? And the point is going to be that he has a job to do, and we're going to see that in a minute, okay? So it happens at that time that Ben-Hadad is sick, all right? And so it's told him that that the man of God, Elisha, is here, and so he says to his messenger, he says, take a present and go ask him if I'm going to be healed or not. Will I recover from the sickness? All right, who is the messenger that he sent? Hazael, all right? Where have we seen Hazael before, or where have we talked about Hazael before? We've seen that name before. I guess we didn't see him, but yeah, Jesse.
Well, Hazael was, he was supposed to be anointed king earlier by Elijah.
Yes, all right, so all the way back in 1 Kings 19, remember when Elijah was running from Jezebel and he was out in the desert, and then he was all the way down at Mount Sinai, and God comes and helps him, and he's ready to die, and God comes and helps him through that moment, and at the end, God gives him 3 jobs. Anybody remember what those 3 jobs were? Find Elisha and anoint him as his successor. Tom?
Going to anoint Hazael king and Jehu.
Right. Anoint Hazael to be the king of Syria and anoint Jehu to be the king of Israel. All right? And if you go back and read that, and it talks about how the sword, how that the one who escapes from Hazael, Jehu will kill, and so on. So the point is these guys, Hazael and Jehu, are going to wield the sword to execute some judgment. All right? All right. Did Elijah do those things? Well, he did one of them, basically. He went and found Elisha, okay? But the other 2 he never did. All right, so this time has been going on. That was all the way back in 1 Kings 19, and this time has been going on, and he did not anoint Hazael, we know, because now Elisha he's not going to anoint him, but he's basically going to sort of, I don't know what the word is.
Set things in motion.
Yes, exactly. He's going to set things in motion here for Hazael to become king. But it would seem, according to the text, that it should have happened a long time ago. Okay? As well as Jehu being anointed as king of Israel. We're going to see that happen again. Elisha is basically going to set things in motion for that to happen. Well, he's actually going to anoint him in the next chapter. Okay? But all this time has passed with that not happening. All right? So now Elisha basically is going to go make it happen. All right, so apparently that's why he's there. That's why he went to Damascus. Okay. All right, so we'll come back to that point in a little bit. All right, so what is Elisha's answer? What is his answer to the question of whether Ben-Hadad is going to be recover or not? Yes.
He says, you go tell him that he's going to recover, but then he's not.
Right, yes, okay. So he says, go say to him, you shall certainly recover, but God has shown me that he will certainly die. All right, so that's kind of a weird answer. So what is he trying to say there? What's going on there?
That the illness won't kill him, but something else will.
Okay, yes. So when we see then the rest of the story, that seems to be the basic point, okay? In one sense, it kind of looks like he's telling him to go lie to him. At any rate, that's kind of how Hazael interprets it and takes it and does it, okay? But what really is good, but you can see there, in some way, he's saying, it's like, you would recover from the illness, but you're going to die, not from the illness, he's going to be killed. Okay? Yeah.
I have a question about all this.
Okay?
You said Elijah, didn't have to do those other two things. Well, how does the fact that Elijah has a double part of the Spirit, how would you explain that part?
The double spirit is interesting. I don't know if you guys talked about this. I was wanting to listen to the classes and I hadn't. I don't know if you guys talked about this. But Elisha getting the double spirit is interesting. Some people will point out that there are twice as many miracles of Elisha recorded as there were of Elijah, which is interesting. And a lot of them are very similar, but Elisha does twice as many, at least again, is what's recorded. I don't know if it affects exactly what's going on here. I mean, it doesn't say. We do see that Elisha is doing what it seems like Elijah was supposed to do. Right, yep. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
I wasn't quite sure just what was going through Elisha's mind there when he had the staring match and how long it went on and everything. I'd like to know what was going on in Elisha's mind that caused him emotion.
Yeah. So what happens next is an interesting kind of a strange thing as well. I was gonna come up here and just stare at Bill and not say anything until it got uncomfortable. But I have really bad secondhand embarrassment, so I know I can never pull it off. So I didn't even try. But we've had that experience, right? So what happens is Elisha just looks at him. Nobody says anything until it becomes uncomfortable, right? It says like they were embarrassed. He got in care, and then he starts crying. Elisha breaks down in tears. Yeah.
It would seem that he's getting this revelation right now.
That's possible.
At the moment, and so he's just in a trance, you might say. He's looking at him, but his mind is elsewhere, if you will.
Yeah, that would be a good explanation as well.
He's seeing the storyline.
Yeah.
He's seeing the story unfold. He's seeing the future unfold before his eyes.
Yeah. And what is the future? Hazel asks, "Hey, why are you crying?" And then what is he saying? What is the future that he sees?
Evil, this king's going to do a lot of evil. There's a bunch of evil.
Yeah.
And somebody's going to kill you.
Yeah, he sees the suffering that Hazael is going to inflict. When he becomes king, he's going to inflict suffering, okay? And so he talks about setting fire on fortresses and killing their young men and dashing pieces their little ones and ripping open the pregnant women. Like, he sees that, and so this is a very powerful, this is a lot of suffering, okay? And Hazael is going to be the one to do that, and he's kind of overcome by it, all right? Okay, so the point here is that Hazael, is going to be part of God's judgment on Israel as a nation. And that judgment is going to be brutal, but that's part of the judgment that's going to be inflicted, all right? And if you think about it, that's part of what God has said from the very beginning, okay? And so he sees that coming, and at this point, then, we kind of have to ask ourselves, what if Elijah had done this many years before? Now, Hazael is obviously he's an evil king. He's a king of Syria, but he's going to be God's instrument as part of this judgment that is coming. And we think about so we've had this. God gave Elijah these two jobs that weren't done. There's another thing that's sitting out there that's kind of an open-ended that hasn't happened yet, and that is the judgment on Ahab's family. Right? Ahab himself died in the battle, but the judgment was on his family and all his offspring, and they're still out there, right? They're still king of Israel, and they're about to, infect and become a problem for Judah. And the Bible doesn't really comment on this, but if we just think about it, what if Elijah had actually gone and appointed Hazael right away, gone and appointed Jehu? Maybe God's judgment would have come much earlier and spared Israel and then Judah from a whole lot of suffering that's going to come through Ahab's family because they would have been gone. You see the point? The Bible doesn't specify that, but you just got to wonder. And of course, we remember Elijah was in a bad place and God was helping him, and maybe that was part of why he didn't do it. We don't know why he didn't do it, but not doing what God says leads to bad consequences every time.
And it also leads to God making sure that his will is done.
And it's exactly right. It's still going to happen. If he tells me to do it and I don't, it's still going to happen, but I'm probably going to get bad consequences because I didn't do what he said. That's a great point. Yeah, here, and then...
It's pretty much, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, you, yes.
It's pretty much stands today with us. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a good lesson for us, so we don't do acts of crimes, and it's like a reoccurrence.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And we wonder why all these bad things are happening to us. Well, yeah, great point, Jesse.
It almost makes you wonder, Elijah had such a bad experience conveying the message. I wonder if Elijah saw the same thing that maybe will stop him. We don't know. But.
Yeah, it doesn't say. I wish we knew. Yeah, go ahead.
Elijah was still caught up in the air, even though he didn't, fulfill those two. So we're saying.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yes. Yes. That's a great point. And, for whatever reason, it doesn't seem like that affected God's ultimate judgment of him, right, as a righteous person. Obviously, Elijah was a man of God and did all kinds of great things. That's a great point. But sometimes, even people of God, us, we want to be people of God. We want to be judged well, and God will. But even then, when we don't do what God says, it has bad effects here. Even if our ultimate judgment, God is merciful toward us, it still affects our lives in a negative way here. Yeah.
There's such a difference between Elijah and Elisha. They're two different people.
Yeah.
Elijah, he could be easily afraid, but scared. Elisha, nothing scares him. He just goes and does whatever God wants him to do, like going up to Damascus with a guy who tried to kill you.
Yeah.
He just does it.
Yeah, and it is interesting. You're right. They are different people, and they react differently, and it is interesting to see their characters. We get them mixed up a lot because their names are so similar, and they do a lot of similar things, like we've already said. Sometimes we get their stories mixed up, but they, as people, are quite different. And I'll just throw this out there. We don't have time. I don't know if you guys talked about this at all again, but there is also a type in the Scripture between Elisha and Elijah. I don't know if you guys talked about this. But when you come to the New Testament, who is Elisha compared to? No, I'm sorry. Who is Elijah compared to? John the Baptist, which makes Elisha Jesus. Okay? So there's a comparison there, and there's a type. And it's not today's lesson. We don't have time. But that's interesting to think about if you go back and look at their miracles, specifically with Elisha. So many of Elisha's miracles are very similar to the miracles of Jesus. Okay, so I'll just throw that out there and then walk away from it. Yeah, all right, there's two, Joel?
I don't have an account for anything, but Elisha performed twice as many miracles
Yes.
as Elijah.
Exactly, which again may be part of him having double spirit, at least what's recorded for us. All right, okay, so what happens next in the story? What does Hazael go and do?
He goes and tells him what Elisha said.
He goes and tells him what Elisha said, that he would recover, and then kills him. Okay? While he's asleep, puts a wet rag over his face, suffocates him, and kills him, and then becomes king himself. Okay? All right, now it's interesting here. Hazael starts the story as what? A messenger, right? He's a messenger guy. We don't know exactly where he came from, what he was, but he was a messenger. What does he call himself when Elisha says this thing about him becoming king and all that? What does he call himself? A dog. He's like, well, who am I? A dog that I'm going to do I'm going to become king and do all these things. Okay? It is interesting, though, but by the end of the story, he is king. And we know from history, Hazael becomes basically the most powerful king that Syria has. Right? He becomes very powerful. And so he's well recorded in history. All right, so this is him. This is an ivory carving of Hazael, who is but a dog, but he becomes like the most powerful king that Syria has. All right? And becomes a very powerful ruler. And it's interesting, this is a statue of Shalmaneser III, who is the king of Assyria. All right, so not Syria. This is Assyria over in the east, Mesopotamia. But he recorded on this statue, there's also word carvings and things that have words. He recorded the event of Hazael becoming king of Syria. All right? And he said, Ben-Hadad, their name from it was a little different, but Ben-Hadad passed away, and Hazael, son of a nobody, took his throne. Isn't that interesting? You see how all these things, like the Bible, lines up and is right every time? This is a lot like we see in the Kings and the Chronicles, right? Where it talks about the king and when they pass away, or when they become king. Ahab, son of Omri, became king. Same thing. They have these Assyrians, and they have chronicles too, and they're chronicling the same thing. But look what he said: Hazael, son of a nobody, took his throne. This guy was a nobody, just like he said, just like God said. Okay, but he becomes very, very powerful, and he will come back in the story. All right. Okay. Moving on. All right. So. Moving on then to Jehoram of Judah. All right, I'm going to go here real quick. Jehoram of Judah. All right, so here we start running into problems. We talked about this earlier, where we have names and we have the two kingdoms going at the same time, and we have different people. This is one of those cases where you have different people with the same name. And in this case, we've already talked about Joram of Israel. Now we're going to have Jehoram of Judah. All right, two different guys. Two different kingdoms, but same name. And sometimes they're called Joram, right? Just Joram. But it's the same guy, right? To us, Bob, Bobby, Robert, same thing, okay? Joram, Jehoram, but there's two different guys. We've already talked about the one in Israel, and now we're talking about the one in Judah. So let's just try to keep this straight. So if you look at the charts I sent, and this is kind of a similar one, the second one that kind of zooms in here, all right? So if you look on the left, you have Israel. You have Omri, we talked about him. Who was the son of Omri that became king? Ahab. All right? Ahab married Jezebel. Okay? Their first son that became king was who? Ahaziah. Okay, over on the left. The next king of Israel was Jehoram, who was his brother. All right, so not the son of Ahaziah, Jehoram's brother, another son of Jezebel and Ahab. All right? So that's what we've seen so far in Israel. Meanwhile, on the right, on going down Judah, we had Asa. Good king or bad? Good king. His son, Jehoshaphat. Good king or bad? Good, but one fatal flaw was what? He kept aligning in different ways with Ahab, right? So there was a military alliance when Jehoshaphat almost got killed, and that's when Ahab was killed. There was a marriage alliance, okay, which now we're going to be told wasn't Jehoshaphat himself, but was his son Jehoram, who was married to the daughter of Ahab and Jezebel. And then later on, we're going to find out her name was Athaliah. All right, so we're kind of putting things together here that we haven't even seen yet in this chart, okay? So, Ahab and Jezebel, in addition to Ahaziah, Jehoram have a daughter named Athaliah. That's the daughter that Jehoshaphat made a marriage alliance to his son Jehoram. Okay? Bad mistake. And we talked about that, the problems that it caused. Now it's going to keep causing problems, okay? And it's going to cause big, big, big problems. So basically what's going to happen is the wickedness of Ahab's family is now going to infect Judah because Jehoshaphat brought it in with a marriage alliance. All right? And was God happy with that alliance? He wasn't. And now we're going to find out exactly why. Okay? All right. Now, just to complete the story, we'll go on to some of the others later. Jehoram's son is going to be Ahaziah. Okay, so again, the same name as Ahaziah of Israel. Jehoram's son in Judah is also going to be named Ahaziah. All right? So we got to keep these names and pictures straight, and that's why I kind of handed out the charts, because for me it's like, I'm looking at the Bible and I'm looking at the chart, and I'm like, okay, who are we talking about, right? Because if you say Jehoram, are you talking about Jehoram of Judah or Jehoram of Israel? Okay? All right, so let's talk about Jehoram of Judah. All right, son of Jehoshaphat. Okay, by the way, just to point out, the same names may not be a coincidence because it's the same family, right? And it's an alliance. And at the very least, it's probably a literary device to point out that Judah is going to become a lot like Israel at this point. They have the same names, and they start doing the same stuff. Okay? All right, was he a good king or bad? Bad king. All right, he was a wicked king. How does it describe it? Especially, also, we need to go to 2 Chronicles 21, by the way, which describes more of Joram's reign. What are specifically, well, let me ask this. Why specifically? We're told, if you go to 2 Chronicles 21 and 6, it specifically says why he was such a wicked king. And why is that? Pam.
He walked in the ways of the kings of Israel and the house of Ahab, done with the daughter of Ahab his wife, and he did what evil in the sight of the Lord. Yeah, he was married to the daughter of Ahab. And so he became like Ahab. He became like the kings of Israel. All right, so being the daughter of Ahab would be the daughter of Jezebel. And so he was married to her. And so he starts becoming compared to her. He becomes like her. Yes?
No, this kind of brings the New Testament because it's important for us. It's good to be equally yoked together, even in the Church of Christ.
Yeah.
You're faithful in the Church of Christ.
Exactly. And
you want to marry someone that's faithful in the Church of Christ. You don't want to marry someone that's unfaithful in leaving the church. Exactly. From the beginning, right? From Genesis, we talked about it over and over. It just keeps coming back up, right? All right. What else specifically? Yep, all right, so he makes the high places and the idolatry of Israel. All right, the Baal worship from Israel, he imports it, okay? From Israel, now it's into Judah, okay? All right, so again, as we've already said, the evil is infecting. What's the first thing he does when he becomes king? Kills all his own brothers. Okay, well, why would he do that?
So they want to take his throne.
Yeah, so he gets rid of the rivals, but they're his brothers. And his dad, Jehoshaphat, specifically made him king. Now, he gave blessings to these other brothers, it talks about. But he was the oldest. It made him king. There really isn't any rivalry that it speaks of, but he kills them all. Okay? All right, so extremely wicked king. And the only reason it specifically calls out, the only reason God doesn't destroy Judah now is why? He made a promise to David. Same thing he's kind of said before, but he's got a promise to David, and that promise was not dependent on faithfulness, and so God's going to keep that promise. But Jehoram is bad enough that the insinuation, at least, is that otherwise God would be ready to be done with these guys. Okay. All right. So God starts sending judgment on Jehoram. So what happens in his kingdom? Okay, so the Edomites revolt. It specifically said back in 1 Kings 22 that his father Jehoshaphat had placed Edom into subjection. Right? You can go look at 1 Kings 22:47. So now they revolt. And Joram kind of goes out to try to get them back, but fails, and so they revolt. All right, what else?
The Philistines.
Okay, yep, it also tells us Libnah revolts. All right, and specifically says because he forsook God of his fathers. So God is doing this because he's not faithful. All right? All right, so, and then we'll talk about the Philistines in a minute. So then who shows up? Well, it doesn't exactly show up. Elijah sends a letter, all right? Does that sound weird to you? Why? Yes, okay. In the story, Elijah's gone. All right, I'd say he's dead, but he's not. He's gone. He was taken up, right? He's gone. All right, but I'll just go through this quickly. So it seems weird to us, but it's actually nothing miraculous going on here. The reality is Elijah is still alive. Remember, we've talked about the story is jumping back and forth. And what that means is when the text talks about a king, it talks all the way through the life of that king and finishes his story, right? So he's finishing all these stories of the kings of Israel, Ahaziah and Joram, and now it's going back and picking up Joram of Judah, and in doing so, it kind of goes back in time to talk about Joram. And so the very end of Elijah's life actually crosses with the beginning of Joram's life. All right? So it seems like maybe something miraculous is going on, but really not. All right? And I'll just say that, and if you want me to prove it to you later, we can do that later. All right? Okay, so what does Elijah say? Yeah, okay, all the things you've done, you're doing wrong. Because you have not walked in the ways of your father and grandfather. Specifically calls out, you are not like Asa, you are not like Jehoshaphat, you are not following in their ways. And then he says, because you have killed your brothers who were better than you. I love that. He just throws that little dig in there. Like, you killed your brothers and they were better than you anyway. All right, because you've done that, then what?
All right, he's bringing a plague on you, on your family, and on your possessions. And the specific plague on him is that he's going to be diseased. He's going to have a disease in his bowels until his bowels come out. All right? And you can see Bill. Bill can explain that to you in detail. Exactly what that means. All right? All right. So then the Philistines and the Arabians invade the land, as Pam mentioned. And what do? They take away everything, exactly what Elijah said. They carry away all his possessions, all his sons, all his wives. Now notice, it says it takes all his sons, but then it says there's one left. Ahaziah, we mentioned already, so he has one son left. But think about what's happening right now. Jehoram's killed all his brothers. And now he has only one son left. So Jehoram is the only man left in the line of David. Right? The line of David that God has promised is down to Jehoram's son Ahaziah. Because all of Jehoram's killed all his own brothers, and then the Philistines came and killed all of Ahaziah's brothers. Okay? And then what happens? Yeah, exactly what Elijah said again. God strikes him with disease in his bowels. And notice for 2 years, it says it was 2 years of agony with this disease in his bowels until his bowels came out and he died. All right? Not good. What's the people's reaction to his death?
They didn't care.
Didn't care.
They didn't care.
They don't set the fires that you would normally set. They don't bury him in the tomb of the kings. And it specifically said he died to no one's regret. How would you like to have that on your tombstone? She died and nobody cared. Okay? And why would they? Everything's going terrible, right? They're getting invaded. Things are going bad. He's not serving God. They're not sad that this guy's gone. All right? I just put this up there again to point out, if you look at the line on the right, Jehoram, no brothers alive. Ahaziah, no brothers alive. So this thread that we've seen all along is kind of, it's in a very precarious place, right? And it's going to get more precarious. All right, so then, next king is Ahaziah. All right, so his son becomes king. He only reigns for 1 year. And what kind of king is he? Also wicked, all right?
Did the same thing.
And why?
Did the same thing.
And why did he do the same thing? The text specifically says. I'm sorry?
He followed his father.
He followed his father and his mother, specifically, who was Athaliah. Yeah, and specifically says she was his counselor. Remember, he was what, 21 when he becomes king, and so his mother is counseling him, and his mother is the daughter of Ahab and Jezebel. Athaliah. She's just as bad as they are, which we'll find out, and she's counseling him to do wickedly. So again, this marriage alliance just continues to send now Judah downward, all right? He was evil in the sight of the Lord, like Ahab. They were counselors to his undoing, and he aligns with Jehoram of Israel, all right? So now this is Jehoram still reigning in Israel. He aligns with him. He's his uncle to go to war against Hazael of Syria. Okay? We're not told much about that war, except apparently it doesn't go well for Israel or Judah because Jehoram of Israel, is injured, and so he returns home. He goes back to Jezreel, and Ahaziah follows him. And then the text tells us there, this is chapter 22 and verse 7, that this was ordained by God to cause Ahaziah's downfall. Now understand what it's saying there. Ahaziah is the king of Judah. All right? Now, because we're running out of time, this battle occurs at Ramoth-Gilead. Another battle that occurred at Ramoth-Gilead, if you go back and look, was the battle where Ahab died. And another similarity, again, Judah and Israel were aligned in that battle. Remember, that's the battle where Jehoshaphat aligns with Ahab, almost dies, but Ahab dies because God had ordained that Ahab was going to die. But at this point, notice, God is setting up this for the death of Ahaziah. And the point is, at this point, Judah's kings are actually more evil than Israel. Remember, Jehoram Israel wasn't good, but he wasn't that bad. He kind of actually does some okay stuff. Judah is just following Ahab's line to the pit. And so the reality is they're both going to die. We're going to see that on Wednesday. But God is setting up specifically for Ahaziah to die because God has had enough of this. All right, this has gone on long enough, and God is done. All right, time is up. 2 quick comments here.
It just shows you that the evil influence of Athaliah
Yes.
had more power to destroy. She wasn't actually in power, but she actually ended up destroying
Yes.
Judah more than these other kings.
Exactly right. She was the one with the influence. Yep. All right, so applications. God draws near to those who draw near to him. The Shunammite woman is continually blessed by God, whereas Jehoram and Ahaziah are repeatedly cursed by God. Okay, same thing we've been seeing over and over. Shall we help the wicked and love those who hate the Lord? Who did God say that to? Jehoshaphat, when he first made the marriage alliance, and then when he went into the battle alliance. Do you think he meant it? And now we see why. Was God serious? And we talked about Corinthians and all the New Testament passages that say the same thing to us about not being aligned with those who are evil, not having a partnership, not having a fellowship with those who are evil. All those things, because those things, it causes immense pain and suffering, and it's still continuing on. All because of Jehoshaphat, who was a good man, but made several really bad decisions, all related to the same thing. And it keeps causing problems for Judah. Okay? The faithfulness of your parents or family will not save you. Did Jehoram of Judah have a good dad and grandfather? Yes. Did that save him? Why? He didn't follow in their ways. It matters if you serve God. If you have faithful parents, faithful family, faithful grandparents, that is great. That is an amazing blessing. But it's only going to matter to you if you follow God yourself. Okay? And the kings over and over again are going to show that to us, and this is one of the clearest. The text specifically calls out, you did not walk in the ways of your parents and your grandparents. All right? Good. All right. Wednesday, we will study chapter 9 and 10, and then a little section in 2 Chronicles there of Jehu. So Jehu is going to become the next king of Israel. Thank you. Yes, please. Only when I'm looking right at it.
Last week at chemo. Sit there. Yes, I already got 3 of those. Anybody need it? I said I would make you not